This is Creepy and Geeky, a part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, Iona Smith joins me to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. Iona is a senior contributor for Ghouls magazine, who also co-arranges monthly themed film screenings in London. Welcome back to the show, Iona.
Hello. Lovely to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So we are deep into phase 2 of the MCU now.
Yes.
With what is possibly their most wildest swing up to this date. They took a big chance on doing Guardians of the Galaxy at this moment. And it paid off well for them.
Yeah, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is best described as the drunk uncle that turns up to your birthday party and you don't know whether it's going to be the fun drunk or the not so fun drunk. And then it swings in the right way, and like he ends up being like the life and soul, and everyone has a great time with it.
And it's the drunk uncle you want at every family gathering.
Exactly. It's like, where is he? Like, I want the excitement again. I want the fun again.
Right. Yeah, I would say with this movie that they had that this kind of refocused Marvel between both Captain America Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy. This kind of made Marvel realize that they needed to both embrace some of the weird aspects of Marvel, but also, keep some of the grounded stuff, the way that it was. Because they kind of doubled down on the weird, because then we get Ant-Man, although Ant-Man was already in production and everything, but it's we get Ant-Man coming up pretty quickly after this, and then they embrace Doctor Strange and everything coming up. They transition Thor Ragnarok more into a style similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, and then but we also have stuff like Captain America, all this stuff. Kind of this Captain America Winter Soldier ends up leading into what becomes of Avengers moving forward. That kind of they refocus the Avengers in that vein more than in what Joss Whedon had been doing in the first two Avengers movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of the opening towards, like you said, kind of like the leveling out of like keeping the goofiness and the funness with this kind of side of the movies, and then also having the grounded, serious stories that develop kind of through the phases as we see kind of in the future. I'm really glad that they did include the comedic elements, because when the kind of Marvel Cinematic Universe started off, like, yeah, there was a few like quips and a few kind of comedy moments, but there was nothing like this that like fully leaned into that comedy side. And I think it opened it up to a lot of different audiences as well.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's not just the comedy, but it's the weird, like the very comic book nature of it that they had kind of not leaned fully enough into. They were still, up until this point, they were still trying to be very serious, even with Iron Man, and like you said, with the very quippy nature of some of them. Yeah, they all had quips and everything like that, but they hadn't leaned into the weird aspects just yet. And leaning into that, they did a good job of kind of bringing both sides together in a way that actually worked moving forward. I think in a lot of ways. So the Guardians is definitely the groundwork, and it's funny too, because now we're starting to see that's what DC's doing, because they hired they hired James Gunn to do Suicide Squad, and they were like, okay, you know what, we like what you're doing, we're gonna make you the head of our studio now, just keep doing that stuff, so they went more into it. So
yeah, I mean, I used to try my hardest to give DC benefit of the doubt and be like, it's fine, they'll catch up eventually. Like, they'll
Yeah,
work out what they're doing. But in my honest
yeah.
opinion, I don't think I've seen a DC movie in the cinema for so long because I just gave up. I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh God, what is happening? Like, at least with Marvel, like, they've like consistently had, I mean, like they've had a few that I've kind of gone into the cinema and been like, that was fine. But I've
Right.
never come out of a Marvel film from this cinematic universe and gone, well, that was the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
unfortunately with DC, I've done that. So
Yeah.
I know with the employing of James Gunn and stuff, they're hoping to lean into it. But
Yeah.
I feel like they're dragging a dead horse at this point. I'm like, guys, maybe let's stop for a little bit.
Well, it feels like, at least, and we're going to get back on track to Guardians, but it
Yeah.
feels like that what DC's doing, because I agree with you completely, because DC has just kind of weirdly messed everything up up until this point. They've been and it would have been fine if they hadn't tried to follow Marvel and doing the cinematic universe. DC has always kind of been better at just kind of, okay, we're going to do a bunch of weird movies, whatever they do, they don't have to connect, just keep it
Mm-hmm.
separate and make it and just have fun with it rather than trying to make it all connect. And once they tried to make it all connect, that's because they didn't do it right, and because ultimately the DC universe is such a different comic book universe in
Yeah.
itself too. And anybody who follows the comic books knows they have rebooted their damn line so many times. The comic book people don't even know what the hell they're doing. So it
No.
really falls in line that the movies wouldn't know what the hell they're doing too. So they rather than rebooting constantly, they just need to just stick to something, figure it out, just do. Honestly, it seems like what they're doing now with James Gunn stuff is actually sort of getting on track. They've got some
Here's
stuff that's
hoping.
going to be cinematic universe type stuff, but most of it's going to fall into camps where you're going to have
Mhm.
Matt Reeves Batman stuff. You're going to have the Joaquin Phoenix Joker universe type stuff, and then you're going to have stuff that kind of falls in between there. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, hopefully they figure out their stuff. I don't know that I'll still watch a lot. I mean, to be fair, I have watched literally every movie so far of the DC universe, just hoping they
Wow.
figure out their tone. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a glutton
you're
for
you're
punishment,
you're
apparently.
still there clinging on for like that small shred of hope. And I put it to bed. I was like, I'm sorry.
I did. Actually went out and watched The Flash, and because I wanted to see Michael Keaton as Batman again, that was the main
Yeah.
thing, and I wanted to see like him just playing that character again and having that much fun.
Yeah, no,
But
that's fair.
yeah, now the movie itself as a whole, not that good, but
Yeah, I've
him in
heard.
it, and yeah, and the Supergirl stuff is really good too. So
Oh,
it's
nice.
just at least um Sasha Kai playing her is like, I
Mhm.
would like to see more of her playing Supergirl. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
There's still
beyond that,
hope then.
the movie's kind of, yeah. Well, and like they were riding the multiverse coattails, and I know they had been planning on it for a long time. This whole movie's been planned for a long time, but it just felt like so much like too little, too late for them.
Yeah, I
To
think
just
that was
kind
the
of
thing.
ride on that. Yeah,
Like you said, with kind of chasing the Marvel tale of like everything going
yeah,
really right for them and trying to learn from kind of the success of Marvel. Yeah, I
right.
feel like DC are just a little bit behind on the times, but who knows? Maybe in the future they'll catch up.
Right. I mean, who knows?
You
Probably
never
not,
know.
but
Yeah, probably not.
but yeah, so getting back to Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yes.
volume 1, as it will retroactively be called.
Mhm.
It's This was, James Gunn coming into this. Again, this is what's interesting about Marvel too. They keep taking these chances on these and they did it from the very beginning with Iron Man with Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau hadn't done anything really, like he'd done maybe Zathura that was kind of like FX heavy and actiony and stuff like that. But to bring him in to do Iron Man, that was crazy.
Oh
And they
yeah.
kept doing that. Like Winter Soldier was two guys who had worked on Community. It's like
Which is wild. Like I love
um,
Community. Like it's one of my
yeah,
favorite shows, but
yeah,
that is a ballsy move.
yeah. Well, and they keep doing that. The people that they
Yeah.
hire on, like James Gunn had a semi good history. He'd done a few things here and there that were really good, like Slither and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But his stuff was more in the horror and just kind of goofy. He came from trauma.
Yeah.
So it comes from a different mentality and stuff that so yeah, so James Gunn coming from that kind of thing. And then we get it later on too. We get people who like Edgar Wright was supposed to be the original director on Ant-Man. And God, I wish we could have seen that version.
Oh, I know.
But I'll get
I would
in
pay
more of that in my
anything.
Ant-Man episode. Yeah. Um, and then and it continues down the line. They get directors who've done more smaller works like Chloe Zhao for Eternals. You get Ryan Coogler for the Black Panther movies. So you've got like they're really choosing along the way Taika Waititi for Thor Ragnarok, people who
Hmm.
haven't done stuff of this level and giving them this chance to do it. And I love that because sometimes these people are knocking it out of the park and giving and bringing such unique like people call the Marvel movies they think of them as being very samey and stuff like that, but I don't really see that so much because I think that each director brings their own sensibilities to them.
Oh,
You
100%.
know,
I think regardless of the movie, the each director in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has their own kind of flavor and their own kind of
right?
brands that they bring to their individual stories. And like I feel like you can really see it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know obviously not a director that didn't have a big kind of background before, but for example, like Sam Raimi coming and doing the
Yeah,
second Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, blew my mind because I'm a massive Sam Raimi fan, but obviously
yeah,
his
same.
background is very different. like,
Yeah,
we like we as fellow horror fans, we know him from his horror work. Like that is
yeah,
his like stuff. And then he comes in and pulls that and we're like, wow, okay, no, I see the horror elements, but also I see
yeah.
why he works perfectly for this kind of story. And it was the same with James Gunn for Guardians, like coming in with his kind of wacky weirdness
Right.
and really putting his own brand on these characters.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's, something that I really love about this movie is just that, you get this group of people who should not work well together that actually does work well and becomes a family by the end of it.
Yeah.
They become like, at the end of this one, they're more friends, but they do become family over the course of, all of this that it's just interesting and it just plays into a lot of those kind of tropes of the found family and especially kind of in like science fiction like people said this is kind of Marvel's version of Star Wars
Mhm.
that you get this group of people together that probably wouldn't work well together but just does and I love that aspect of it really pulls it together well because you see all these people who and I mean it's even towards the end of the movie that uh Peter Quill is talking to them and saying, I see losers here. And he's like, not because you guys suck, but because we've all lost something. And
Mhm.
we're all and that's it to the core. They've all lost family in ways, or they're like, only the one individual, like in terms of Rocket and Groot, they're like the only kind that they are. And that so by doing that, they've found this family together. And that's a fun thing, especially for people who are, maybe like me, who kind of has always felt like an outcast or has always been kind of a loner and stuff like that. That I've gravitated towards people like that and friends like that who, I consider like family in that way because that's how it is,
Oh, 100%. And I
especially
feel
like in the
like,
horror community.
oh yeah, I mean, me and you are very much both kind of immersed in that
Yeah.
community, and we both know that like you get your found family with those kind of communities.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
I mean, it like even with individual characters and Guardians, like I feel like very often people can kind of see their friends in that ensemble. Like
Right.
some of us have like a Drax who doesn't quite isn't is
Yeah.
kind of not quite the butt of the jokes, but doesn't kind of quite catch on to the jokes as quickly
Right.
as everyone else. And then you've got Rocket, who's always the super sarky one, always there to kind of be a bit giving it all that, but then
Right.
will actually be there for you in a time of need and will do anything and everything for you that they can. And
Right.
then also in the meanwhile, get yourself in trouble as well.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and then you've got people like Groot who are like the big, lovable, kind of, I think, quite misunderstood character in the fact that no one really
Yeah.
understands what the heck he's saying half the time.
Right.
But
Yeah.
he's so sweet and so kind, and he's like this just loving giant.
Right.
Like there's always those types of friends in a big ensemble friendship group.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, and that's what makes it, I think that's what made it so unique and fun for people, was that, you go into this, you're expecting, some good fun, of course. But you find something a lot more meaningful through this. And
Yeah.
as we've gone along, each one of these movies has gotten just has added more and more to the overall like Guardians mythos of it all. And just keeps adding to the family, like
Mm-hmm.
Nebula and Yondu, who are more kind of antagonistic in this one, become part of the family in the next one.
Oh,
And
it hurts my heart so much whenever anyone mentions Yondu. Like
yeah.
he is one of my favorite Marvel characters. I love him. But like him being an antagonist in this one is, I think, my favorite part of his character, because I just love I mean I love the actor anyway. Like
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I definitely did know Michael Rooker from Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer before I knew before I knew Guardians, but I love him. And so yeah, him playing Yondu
That's
is one
funny.
of my absolute favorite things about Marvel.
See, for me, like I didn't say, I don't think I've still seen Henry Portrait of
Ooh,
a Serial Killer.
it's very
But
different to this.
yeah, yeah. But I know Michael Rooker from no, from Mallrats. So
Yes.
that's it's a much different role. So
That's a very big sidestep as well. Yeah.
so no, but Michael Rooker's always been one of those great actors. He's always just whatever he does, he brings. He always understands the assignment. He's one of those actors
Very
who
much
always
so.
understands the assignment.
Yeah.
And it's great to see him. Obviously, him and James Gunn are good friends because he's been in pretty much everything James Gunn has done.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it it's kind of hard. We're kind of jumping all over the place with the movie, but it's kind of hard to talk about the movie without jumping all over the place.
It's
But
true.
it's and I don't like to do plot synopsis, because go watch the movie. I want to have a
Yeah.
conversation about it anyway. But yeah, but that's what's fun about it. And so I know that Chris Pratt has gotten a lot of crap his way, and I don't necessarily think that it's completely warranted. I don't think that he's really done anything that wrong. Um, for the most part, not outwardly, like, sure, I guess his brother's like kind of iffy or whatever like that,
Mm.
and everything. But now I will say the one thing that I don't like is the whole him and Anna Faris breakup. That seems
Oh no.
really bad.
Yeah,
So,
that was not a
but
good
that's
time.
personal between them. So like,
Exactly, exactly.
like outside of that, he as a person, he seems to be generally okay. He doesn't seem
Yeah.
compared to a lot of other people, he could be worse. So,
If you
and I
go by a lot of his kind of cast responses and stuff to what he's like on set and all that kind of stuff, like pretty much all of the cast of Guardians get along with him. Like they
yeah,
are, like, even outside of the characters, that cast does seem quite close and quite like familiar with each other. So
right. Yeah, and and I know that he's gone off and like when he's not doing movies and stuff like that, he goes to hospitals and he'll dress as Star Lord and actually go and meet kids and stuff. So
yeah.
that in itself is just like awesome. Like whatever you do, and besides that, like I've always thought Chris Pratt was a very funny and very personable. I loved him on Parks and Rec.
Oh
Um,
yes.
I'm just
Another one
talking
of my
about all my
favorites.
favorite sitcoms. Yeah.
Oh, I'm fully there. I'm fully there for the sitcom life as well. I've rewatched Parks and Rec about
Oh
five
yeah.
or six times all the way through. It's
I haven't
really
gotten
good.
quite that far. I think
Oh,
I've done two full run through so far. And
the
I
the
haven't gotten
COVID
there yet.
pandemic. The COVID pandemic was the rerun and rerun of that show.
Yeah. It's a good show for that too. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
but I loved him from that. And so it was great to see him, and he would pop up in movies occasionally as kind of like
Mhm.
the dopey best friend or whatever. And
Yeah.
he had that. And so it's funny to see, because this is the movie that really rocketed him to stardom
Oh
in
yeah.
that way, and gave him a lot more of the thing that pushed him into the Jurassic World franchise, and a
Hmm.
lot into the stuff he does today. So while I think that is okay, I think he really is better at the comedy aspect more than the action aspect. And so
Yeah.
he keeps getting all these action things, and I'm like, no, dude, pull back from that, go back into the comedy stuff and do that. That's my one quibble with everything. It
Yeah.
works well for him in the MCU, don't get me wrong. As
Hmm.
Star-Lord, it works well. He plays a very good Star-Lord. Although I did see recently that Adam Brody had auditioned for Peter Quill Star-Lord.
Really?
And I want to see that version, because
Yeah.
I think Adam Brody has been like seriously misused by Hollywood.
In like an alternative in a multiverse somewhere,
Yeah,
he is
yeah,
playing Star-Lord, and I
yeah,
would quite like to travel to that multiverse and check that out, because no, I
yeah,
completely agree with you. He is a very underused and underappreciated actor.
yeah. Although I will say, going back to the horror stuff, he
Hmm.
is a really good person who's in a lot of horror movies.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, it's nice to see him, like, playing in that universe a lot. So
Wasn't he in Jennifer's Body?
he's in Jennifer's Body. He was in
Oh, what a film.
Scream 4.
Yeah.
He was in oh my
He's
god,
in
Ready or Not.
yeah, Ready or Not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So he's in a lot of stuff. Like, and I know he's in more stuff too that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head. But
oh,
yeah.
he's our
So it would
boy.
have been what?
He's our boy.
Yeah. No, and like here's the thing. I go back to when he was on the OC. All right.
Oh,
So
yes. Yes,
I
yes,
loved him
yes.
on the OC because he was like me. He was a comic book geek, so it was just like, I identify with stuff like that. So it was always
Hmm.
like, so for me, I would love to have seen what he would have done as a Star Lord. Like, again, I appreciate Chris Pratt. I think he does a great job in that. But yeah, I'd like to see the alternate universe version where he's doing that. Probably the same universe that Tom Selleck is Indiana Jones. So I don't know. It
Yeah.
might be a little
Yeah.
weird.
I mean, I'm fully like, if at some point we're able to travel to that multiverse, I feel like we need to take a day trip and go and check out those films, because I would be back.
Right?
I would be fully backed for both of those. Like
Right.
they both sound amazing to me. I would love to see the opening scene with Adam Brody doing "Come and Get Your Love."
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
that would. I feel like that's on like my bucket list of stuff I need to see before I die.
Right, right. Exactly. No, I think honestly it would have been so cool to see him in this movie. But I do think that Chris Pratt was well cast and he does a good
Oh,
job
he
at it.
was. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah. Um, but going into, I want to talk about the rest of the cast as well.
Mhm.
Zoe Saldana.
Yes.
She has been in multiple comic book slash genre things. Like she was in oh man, now I'm forgetting. I think she was in The Losers, wasn't she? I could be
Oh, was
wrong.
she? Oh, yeah, no, she
Um,
was. Yeah.
yeah. So
I've got,
with Chris Evans and
yeah.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Hmm.
And then she was also in the Star Trek, the Kelvin trilogy of the Star Trek movies.
Yes. I
So
love, I love her in Star Trek.
yeah,
Like,
I
I mean,
love
I mean,
her as
I'm,
Uhura. Yeah.
I'm, I'm, I'm a big like Trekkie anyway, but those
Okay.
films were like, not everyone loved them, but I adored them. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I really had a
So
lot of fun with them.
so I'm not a Trekkie. I've
Fair.
watched all the movies, and I've seen some of the shows.
Hmm.
Some episodes. I'm not big on Trek itself, but I will say that I really like the Kelvin trilogy. I own it
Yeah.
on 4K now. But I
Nice.
like what J.J. Abrams does, and I know a lot
Yeah.
of people don't like him, but I like his work, and so I
I
think he
can
did really good. It made Star Trek accessible for me. So
It did, yeah. And I can forgive the excessive lens flares for the humanistic stories. Like,
it's egregious in the first Star Trek movie too.
oh,
It is so bad in that movie.
I thought I was having like, when you get a migraine and you get the light
Yeah,
spots.
yeah.
I thought thought I was having that the first time I watched the first film. I was like, what is happening? Am I having a migraine mid-movie right now? But no,
Right.
there was just a lot of lens flare.
Yeah, no, it was just like a lot of lens flare.
A lot, yeah. A lot.
Yeah, way too much. But yeah, I digress. But yes,
Yeah.
so she was great in that. I loved her as Uhura. She did that, brought like a lot more to it than and that's what I like about the Kelvin trilogy too. And I'm totally getting wildly off topic again, but that's what I like about the Kelvin trilogy is that they took the familiar characters and kind of twisted them, and the actors were able to make them their own as well. So
Yeah.
that you know, but anyway, so back to this. I love Zoe Saldana as Gamora. She does such a good job as this character, and through multiple versions of her, as we find out later on.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's getting to see this version of her, and then the relationship that starts to build between her and Star-Lord is really fun and interesting in this one. So
I like the fact that their kind of plot does she doesn't do what I feel like a lot of comic book women do when they have a love interest in these kind of universes, where they fall hard and fast and it's all like really like, wow, he's charming, he's funny, let's go in. She hates him at the beginning. Yeah. She is like, who is this man child? Why is he in my face? He needs to leave. And like, it's almost like she learns to tolerate him, then like him, and then finds herself loving him much to her annoyance.
Right.
And yeah. I feel like that is one of the most real love stories you will ever see.
Well, and then it plays true to both of their characters as well, because Star-Lord is this immature guy who's been like hanging around pirates basically his whole life, and hasn't had to grow up. And through the course of this movie, he's forced to save the universe in a lot of ways and step up in a way he's never had to before. And a part of that is because of this family that challenges him and tries to and makes him want to be a better person. Now, does he always do that? No, because it's not in keeping with his character. No. It's okay to mature a bit and to do the right thing, but also still be immature and a goofball. So
and then
that's how I live my life.
It's the best way to live. But then like in contrast, you've got Gamora, who has had to live and had to grow up way too quickly. Like I mean, obviously with her backstory that you learn about the fact that she's an adoptive daughter of Thanos, which this movie sets up for the big deal for like the end of this kind of phase. Like this is the beginning of the end for that. Well, in my perspective, I know we had like flashes and hints before this, but this is when you're like, here is the big bad, off we go. And I feel like her story of she has had to grow up, she has had to defend herself, she has had to prove herself from such a young age, and now she's kind of found herself in this botched together family that all of a sudden she's like, I don't have to have my guard up all the time, I can maybe relax slightly around them, I can kind of show my funnier, relaxed side, but it takes a lot for her to get to that point. And I think by the end of this film, she's not quite there, but like later on, you see that side of her come out.
Right. Well, and I think that's, she wants to be away from Thanos. She doesn't want to be as much as Nebula hates being treated as second to Gamora and everything like that, she's still falling in line with what Thanos wants.
Yeah, she's
whereas
still very
Gamora
much
is looking for her out.
Yeah, like Nebula is very like in the Stockholm syndrome kind of section still. She wants to prove herself, she wants to make him happy, whereas Gamora is kind of past that stage and at the point of, well, morally this is not right, and she recognizes that, and she's grown as a person and as an individual to the point that she's like, I need to step away, I need an excuse, I need a way to escape.
Well, and then that's what makes it funny too, because the way her character is that this group of people that she aligns herself with would be the last kind of people that she would be part of.
100%.
But she finds this kinship with them again because she's part of the lost. She's lost everything that was her, from childhood on. She's lost who she was. And this is a chance in a way to find who she really is underneath that.
Yeah.
And she's putting herself with this group of people that is very similar to her. She's known as the daughter of Thanos amongst the universe. Everybody knows who she
Yeah.
is and hates her. And so she aligns herself with this group, and then through the course of this movie and then later on, becoming part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, that they become heroes. They become people to be admired and people who stepped up when nobody else could. And
Yeah.
that's what makes all of this character dynamic and this group very interesting.
I feel like, especially because I know you were saying about she's like kind of universally hated
Right.
at the beginning. I feel like the moment that really kind of doubles down on that is the prison scene, when you
Oh
see
yeah.
everyone and you see the eyes on her, and no one cares about anyone else in that group. It's her. They are
Her.
going for
Yeah.
her. And they're like, you did this to my family. I blame you for this, even though a lot of it was either by order of Thanos or indirectly by Thanos. But
Yeah.
she's there, she's to blame. Let's end her. And I also feel like the kind of progression of her character and the morality you see her feeling as you kind of go through the film is reflected in that scene as well. Because all the guys kind of gang up on her and they're gonna slit her throat or something before the others kind of jump in and go, whoa, 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 let's not do this, as
Right.
kind of the introduction to Drax. In my opinion, I feel like she could have fought off majority of those men.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like she could have ended most of them, if not all of them. But she's
Right.
kind of letting it happen because I feel like at that point
There's a sense of guilt. Yeah.
she morally kind of feels like, oh, well, maybe they are right. Maybe it is me. Maybe
Yeah.
I have to kind of, I guess, redemption for my sins in kind of my life being ended in some dark corner of a prison. And then Drax's interference kind of kicks it back in, and she goes, wait, no, like this isn't how I'm going down. I'm going to
Right.
prove myself.
And she does take them all out, so it's
Yeah.
like, she could have at any point, but yeah, definitely she was giving in to the moment and giving in to that guilt of what she had done, and was just like,
Yeah.
just do it already,
She
and so
hesitates because of it.
yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not until Quill intervenes that things that she decides, oh, you know what, there is something left to fight for,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And that's probably why she aligns with Quill at that moment, because it's about, he came up and was like, gave her a reason to fight and to continue on and to work against this rather than just give in and give up to them. So
Yeah.
yeah. And so speaking of Drax,
I love
is
him.
Drax is an interesting character. So Drax, I like to go back to the comic books a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
in these episodes, because they really do inform the way I look at these movies a lot of
Yeah.
ways. But also I like to see where they deviate.
Mm-hmm.
So in the comic books, at this point in time, Drax had been this kind of version of himself. But there was a version of Drax that came earlier on in I think around in the 70s. And it was aligned. He was part of a group with Adam Warlock, Gamora, himself, and Pip the Troll.
What a team.
Pip the Troll. Yeah, it's so wild, and then we've eventually got all these characters now in the Marvel universe in some form or version since then. But it's interesting to see that transition, because in his first incarnation, um, it, he was human. He's actually human from Earth. And he was driving with his family in his car, his wife and child, and it was destroyed by Thanos. And he died. Him and his family all died, and it was a mentor from the Titans of wherever Thanos is from. I can't remember at the moment, but they are basically Thanos's father, mentor, raised Drax from the dead, and gave him power. And he was like, he was basically kind of like he was green and Hulk like, but had like a purple costume and cape and everything like that. It was very weird. Um, and he had like his sole thing was to kill Thanos, and so there's parallels for sure what
Mhm.
they do. Later on down the road, I'm not quite sure how, but Drax ends up changing from that kind of, probably because they didn't want to have a Hulk like cosmic character that's basically kind of looked like the Hulk, and gave him the version that we see now, more gray with the
Mhm.
tattoos and more of a like an assassin type with knives, which
Yeah.
I think was a good change in a lot of ways. And that version was definitely part of a version of the Guardians of the Galaxy with Star Lord and Rocket and Groot.
So
So
I've just looked up the image of 70s Drax. And so the image looks incredibly familiar to me. I was not like,
right,
I'm not accustomed to this version of Drax, but somewhere in the chaos that is my discovery of Marvel as I've grown up, I've definitely seen this image before, and I never connected that to Drax. Never.
yeah. So if you've ever read the Infinity Gauntlet storyline,
Mhm.
that's possible that's probably where you saw that at, because he was
Ah,
part of the group of people aligned with Adam Warlock and
yeah,
them who were trying to stop Thanos from
yeah.
destroying the universe.
The
So,
more you know. But yeah, I'm glad they changed it to the Drax we've got today, I think.
but yeah, so I think that for a lot of people, if people had looked up Infinity Gauntlet around this time period of trying to connect the comic books and with the movies and stuff, that yeah, that would have been the version you would have seen, was the weird Drax. And he lasted until, like, because that was an 80s comic, so I'm pretty sure he lasted somewhere into the 90s. um
Yeah.
so, and because his this group of characters with Adam Warlock, Drax, Gamora, and Pip the Troll, they kind of continued on into the 90s for quite a bit.
Mm,
So, but yeah, so the character is very much in keeping with the more modern incarnation of him, which is good. It would have been a little weird to see, like, early 70s to 90s Drax uh jumping around with a cape and everything.
yeah,
So
I feel like aesthetic wise, that probably wouldn't have suited everyone else.
no,
Like I know there's
right,
supposed to be a bit of a ragtag bunch of like weirdos, but I feel like the
right,
cape especially maybe wouldn't have fitted in there.
right. But I do like Dave Bautista's acting in this. It's one of
Oh
those,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's interesting too to see him grow as an actor since this too, because I think this was really his big breakout. Like I'm pretty sure he did some work here and there before that, but it's after this point that he really starts to grow as an actor and branch out from here.
Oh, 100%. I mean, so I am a full believer that Dave Batista is the best actor that's come from a wrestling background. And that is my personal opinion, and people will come for me for it, but I love him. His acting ability, especially since Guardians, has only gotten better. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, again, people are going to come for me for this, but Knock at the Cabin that Shyamalan
Oh yeah.
released recently, not the best film in the world storyline wise, but his acting in
His
that,
performance in it, yeah.
oh my god, he stole
That
the entire film for me. He is
that and
incredible.
Glass Onion. Um,
Yes.
he was fantastic in Glass Onion.
I mean, I really enjoyed Glass Onion just because it wasn't what I kind of thought it was going to be, same as when Knives Out came out, but
Yeah.
he's excellent in that. And then, I mean, Dune as well. Like he's
And I
really good
haven't
in Dune
watched
as
Dune,
well.
but
Oh,
yeah.
it's so good. I mean, I'm again the nerdiness is coming out in me, and that's another
Right.
one of my things I'm a bit of a fan of.
Yeah,
But
see,
yeah, he is excellent.
Dune I'm not as interested in, so it's never been like something I need to go see. My son really loves it, but yeah.
Yeah, I blame my
My son
dad.
is extra nerdy, so
Nice, nice. Yeah, I blame my dad for my Dune obsession.
that's
He
funny.
made me watch the original
Original
film
Lynch version.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and read the books when I was younger.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So And he goes back and reads them like again and again and again. So, but again,
Right.
I digress. Dave Bautista in general, his acting is
Yeah.
moi chef kiss, so good. And then as
Yeah.
Drax, he brings this childlike innocence and this warrior ferocity into
Yeah.
one character, and I just feel like it's so well performed. And I feel like his characterization of Drax opens up kind of accessibility and understanding to a lot of people outside of the cinema as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that I've spoken to about Guardians before have related to Drax in terms of understanding of things like autism,
Yeah. Yeah.
because like social cues, understanding of kind of,
Right.
like I was saying earlier, the being the butt of jokes and things, but not quite clicking on straight away, or having kind of a couple of steps to take to get to the
Right.
joke to understand
Right.
it as well.
Being
Like a
too
lot of people,
literal, that stuff. Yeah.
exactly. Like when he doesn't understand the concept of like similes and metaphors, it
Right.
so many people that I've spoken to have been like, that's me. I get that. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I have an understanding now of what you
Right.
like go through when I'm a very metaphorical person. I say metaphors a lot. And I feel
Right.
my friends are like, I don't like, you need what? Like you need to
Yeah.
explain this to me. And it just doesn't register, because for me, I'm like, it's a metaphor. But yeah, Drax
Right.
is so good for that kind of
Yeah.
understanding, I think.
Representation. Yeah.
Exactly. He's very good at representation.
Yeah. No, and that's what's, and again, that's part of this found family nature of it all, is like, sure, he's kind of the butt of their jokes, and he's kind of the butt of the joke of all the movies he's in too. He's got weird, funny things that he does, that add to that character because of the literalness and stuff. But it's definitely, like you said, it's people, if you are somebody who um is accepting of people, then you're going to come across people like this a lot.
Yeah,
And you're going to be friends with people like this. And so you recognize that. And while it's funny, it's also um you know endearing as well, because you see that friend in this character of Drax as well, and they're
exactly.
they're your Drax in your group or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it fun, is that everybody, not everybody, but there's always the people who enjoy these movies a lot have that kind of group dynamic with friends too. There's a Guardians of the Galaxy group out there that that of your friends, because that's it, like you said, with Rocket and with Groot and everything, that you've got these kind of characters in your friend groups, and
Definitely.
that's what makes the friend groups fun. So
Exactly. It's a variety. It's good.
yeah, if you're all the same, it's boring.
Oh God,
But
exactly.
but yeah, so no, I think he's Dave Bautista is such a really good actor. I would agree with you that he's probably the best actor. He's probably not my favorite of the wrestling actors.
That's fair.
Unfortunately, I do have to go with The Rock on this one, because I like The Rock. He does a good job, and I think he's actually a really good actor as well. He
Mhm.
chooses these more blockbuster kind of meathead, not necessarily meathead, but blockbuster hero roles, because that's what he wants to do right now. But
Yeah.
you dig into his filmography. He's played some complicated people before.
Mhm.
And so it's nice it's nice to go back and see that he was doing that. He has decided he wants to be the hero guy,
Mhm.
and that's working for him. He's being the big action hero, like kind of the throwback to the 80s stuff. um but it's nice to see. And it's the same thing kind of with John Cena too, because John Cena was
Yeah.
one of those guys who tried to make it as like a serious action guy. And I think he's finally finding his footing now, through, again, of course, James Gunn, and playing Peacemaker.
Yeah.
And I think that he's kind
Yeah.
of finding that niche, because if anybody's watched the last two Fast and Furious movies, you see that
Another of my
the
loves.
uh, same. See, you got it.
Great minds.
You
Great
gotta be
minds.
you gotta be on the show more. Um, but he's in not in the most recent one, but in Fast 9, we get
Hmm.
introduced to his character. And he's pretty much played like a straight kind of villain aspect through most of it. And he's not really goofy or anything like that. But in the new one, in Fast X, his character is super goofy.
Oh yeah.
Um, and having a lot more fun. And it plays more into, I feel like, who John Cena is as an actor, and as a person.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, I want to be able to see actors, stretch outside of themselves, and that's all well and good and everything like that. But sometimes leaning into what you're good at is not a bad thing.
No,
So,
I feel like, yeah, I feel like I agree with you in terms of his kind of filmography up to this point. Like, I'm going to ask a question, but by asking this question, I might be giving a spoiler for something. Have
okay.
you seen Barbie yet?
Oh yeah, yeah, yes,
His
yes.
his cameo
Oh,
in
it's perfect.
Barbie.
It's so perfect.
I mean,
It's like,
that is another thing I could like talk about for a million years, just that film. But his
yeah,
cameo in Barbie, I was like, your comedy in this
yes.
is exactly up your street. Like it's the
No,
same kind of goofiness as what he's like in Fast 10.
yes, yeah, yeah. And I mean, he's been doing kind of this, like he's done a few comedies over the years and stuff, and he's kind
Yeah.
of started to embrace that. I think he kind of wants to do both and kind of wants to do a little bit more serious and stuff. But I do appreciate that he's kind of leaning into the comedy a little bit more, because I
Mhm.
think that's what he's really good at.
Yeah.
And so, especially with something like, but that's the thing though, too. I know, again, we're going wildly off field, but
I feel like we do
um
this a lot.
oh, I like, this is my whole show, is like I
I
get on
love it
one
though.
topic and then I start going off in all the directions. But anyway, so John Cena's performance as Peacemaker in the Peacemaker
Mhm.
TV series gives you a lot of that emotion and a lot of that backstory to that character, and you get more of a complex character study to what could have been very much a one note character in the
Yeah.
Suicide Squad movie. So, for anybody who hasn't watched Peacemaker, go watch it because it's so good. It's definitely James Gunn all the way through. It's and this is what's funny too, because with Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, he's able to take what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy and punch it up just a little bit more to give it that R rating,
Yeah.
that makes it in some ways even funnier.
Hmm.
And so definitely go check those out. At least this was all related to James Gunn. So I
It's true.
circled it back around.
You've gone full circle. I mean, I was gonna say, to make it go full circle, like John Cena's probably, because of his comedic timing, he is probably my second favorite wrestler actor.
Yeah.
But Dave Bautista, the reason that he's still top of my list is because of how well he plays into the
Yeah.
comedy and the serious for me.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
his dramatic moments. I mean, even in the MCU, his dramatic moments
Yeah.
are, they tug at my heartstrings. And I mean, I will await your conversation about volume 3 for Guardians,
Yes.
because my god, that film broke me.
Oh yeah. No, that one that
Oh,
one's that one's a heartbreaker for
I
sure.
was
Yeah.
weeping.
Hmm. Yeah, no, these movies, this first one not so much, although you could get a little teary-eyed here and there.
Yeah.
But the later two are very much like really work you over pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, they just keep getting sadder and sadder.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
but
Oh, I have a little question for you.
yeah.
What's your ranking when it comes to the Guardians films? What's your like top and
Hmm.
what's your bottom?
So, pre number 3, it was 1 and then 2, 1 at the
Hmm.
top and 2 at the bottom. While I like 2, and I like it a lot. The Ego as a character is interesting, and I love Kurt Russell as an actor. So he was really good in that. But I don't know, it just doesn't hit as well as number 1 does.
Yeah.
But I think with number 3, I think I have to put number 3 up on top now. I need to rewatch it
Ooh,
again. But part of it is the High Evolutionary is one of my favorite villains in the comic books. Now,
nice.
he's done much differently in this version. I'm
Hmm.
hoping we kind of get some taste of him maybe later, because he's not dead.
Ooh.
Which is another thing that I love about they're starting to do with some of these movies is they're
Hmm.
not killing the villain.
Yeah. They're never
I hate
dead.
that they kill the villain.
They're
Yeah.
never dead until you see a body.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you see a corpse, they're
yeah.
probably dead, but they can still be resurrected in some sort of
Yeah.
multiverse tangent.
It's
But
based on the comic books, man. Everybody's come back at least
everyone comes
once.
back. Yeah. Everyone makes a
The only
comeback.
person, yeah, the only person who is yet to make a real true comeback in the comic books, they like to say, at least in Marvels anyway, is Uncle Ben.
Oh,
Because it used to be Uncle Ben and Bucky,
yeah.
but they eventually figured out a way to bring Bucky back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely.
but
Yeah. Uncle Ben feels like it's like a bad joke though,
oh
because I feel like if
yeah,
they brought back Uncle Ben, everyone would be like, no, like
yeah,
he's like dead in
he's
like every
untouchable. Yeah.
universe.
Now
Every
that
universe he's dead.
sort of he's been back a couple of times. That like in the Spider-Verse stuff, you meet a
Yeah.
version of him that's like he actually has the spider powers. So it's
Oh,
interesting. So yeah,
I love
which
that.
which then also brings the fact that if he's got the spider powers, then what happened to Peter?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh no.
and I'm
Oh
pretty sorry, I didn't mean to bring it down.
no, no, it's fine. It's fine. Spider-Man is my other Marvel like adoration. Like so Spider-Man
Okay,
is like the one I think I was invested in the most
okay,
pre-MCU. And
okay.
then MCU happened, and obviously Spider-Man didn't really show up because we had
Yeah,
the Tobey Maguire stuff, but that was
right,
very separate. And then yeah, and then obviously with everything that's happened now, and like Tom Holland's
right.
come in, and he's a lovely Spider-Man for me. He's
Yeah.
lovely. So he gives me like nice little coziness. I'm like, oh, you're so sweet.
Yes. And personally, he's my favorite of the Spider-Man so far. So,
Yeah,
you know.
I feel like he embodies it the most in terms of the geekiness, the age, the
Mhm.
intelligence. He has the kind of triple
He
threat,
has the
whereas
whole
the
thing.
others,
Yeah.
yeah, whereas like Andrew
Yeah.
Garfield was slightly too hot to be accepted as like the nerd that he was supposed to
Right.
be. He was too cool. It was like,
Yeah.
dude,
He was too
you're
cool.
not.
He was the better Spider-Man
Yes,
of the two between him and Tobey Maguire. He was the
yep,
better Spider-Man.
yes.
But here's the thing. I Tobey Maguire never worked for me. So
Oh,
I know people can hate on me, but Tobey
I was
Maguire has
such
never worked for me.
pre Tom
I like
Holland.
Tobey Maguire. I like
Yeah,
Tobey Maguire. Don't get me wrong. I
no, of
think he's a
course.
great actor, but I just never bought him as Spider-Man,
Mm,
as Peter Parker even. Um, and then Kirsten Dunst, I love her too. She's not Mary Jane to me, so it
fair.
just kills me because I'm just like, okay, Mary Jane should have been a wholly different character, you know, a wholly
Yeah,
different actress.
yeah,
Um, and just like that was the whole thing. Like I love Sam Raimi, and we'll get back to what you were talking about, Sam Raimi and stuff,
yeah.
and how he did horror, but he also did comic books because he did the three Spider-Man movies.
That is very
So,
true. Yep, I stand corrected.
but he, but what he did with the Spider-Man movies, it didn't always work well for me. Like, and so I appreciate what they were, and I really appreciated how they were able to bring a lot of that into No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool in that way. But you know, I digress. But yeah, so Tom Holland's my super favorite of all of them, just because I think he embodies everything about Peter Parker and Spider-Man very well,
Yeah,
even if it is a different way into it than the traditional way.
yeah. I think I agree with you for that. For all rounder Spider-Man, the best one.
Yeah,
But yeah, Andrew Garfield was the best just Spider-Man.
yeah,
And for just for physicality and for like abilities and all that kind of stuff, going in from that kind of tangent of the
and he was the
storyline.
snarkier Spider-Man too.
Yeah,
He had the
yeah. His
jokes.
quips
Yeah,
were there. Like he had the little like sarcastic comments to the villains, and it was all a bit like, oh, he's
yeah,
being cheeky again, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas Tobey Maguire, I still have a special place in my heart for him because he
yeah.
was, I mean, I am like the queen of cringe, and he was my absolute cringe king. His his awkward cringiness as Peter
Yeah.
Parker was I loved it. I
I
loved it so
I will
much.
say that his version of Peter was definitely the cringiest. So
Yeah.
it definitely embraced that aspect of the character
Mm-hmm.
very well. So I'll
Yeah.
give him that much. So,
Good.
but all right, back to Guardians. I don't
Okay.
even know how we got onto Spider-Man. Um, It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I
But
think
back to
we're
good.
just going off on our fan tangents. It's great.
Right. But back to what we were saying. That so moving on to Rocket, of course.
Yes.
Rocket is so Rocket in the beginning, Rocket through the series, um, obviously gains more prominence. And I don't necessarily fully buy him as the heart of the group. Um, in the third movie, yes, obviously in the third movie, but in so this goes back to what you were asking about, which was my favorite of the Guardians movies.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So number three, obviously, we get much more of Rocket's history, and that goes into why I appreciated that between that and the High Evolutionary being the villain of this piece was why
Hmm.
it kind of elevated it for me in terms of
Fair
that.
enough.
So there was a lot of stuff that I was really excited to see, like Counter Earth and Adam Warlock and stuff. A lot of comic book geekiness stuff that they threw in there that sort of worked for me, sort of
Hmm.
didn't at times, but it worked well enough that I would say that it's probably all right. It's probably neck and neck with number one, really,
Oh,
because
okay.
it's kind of hard to beat number one. Number one
Yeah.
is such a good all over just one and done film. Even if we never got another Guardians movie, that if we just had number one, it was a great movie just all on its own.
Yeah.
So
As a standalone, it
yeah,
was great.
yeah. But yeah, with number three, I think that it definitely sits above two,
Hmm.
and sits probably equal with number one.
Nice.
But so going back to Rocket, I like Rocket. I think Rocket is one of those characters that so sometimes there's characters in the comic books that don't work for me in the comic books that will work for me better in the movies.
Oh, okay.
And part of its characterization and writing and stuff like that that elevate it more than because you're getting more of a distilled version of that.
Hmm.
Deadpool's a character that it's like that, where Deadpool has so many different writers and stuff like that, and so many different flavors in the comic books that you don't really I don't appreciate him as much in the comic books as many others do. But I
Hmm.
really appreciate Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I
Yeah.
like that version specifically.
Hmm.
And I think that's similar to with what they do with Rocket in this is that they bring even in this you're starting to see when he's got um his outfit off when they go at the prison and you can see the cybernetics implanted into him,
Yeah.
and just that Peter's looking at him and just trying not to stare, and he's just like you can even tell in Peter's face that he feels bad for him.
Hmm.
um and so Rocket is such a tragic character, and you can understand his anger and his hate towards everything.
Hmm.
And so to find this family of people, again, it's going back to this family and these friends and stuff, that this group of people that make you feel like you belong, and that you're part of something for once. Obviously him and Groot were pals and doing their own thing, but
Hmm.
how much can that sustain without others being part of your life? And and that was great to see in this movie, that he finds that group, that family that'll take him in and
Yeah,
accept him.
yeah, I think like, so Rocket in this film is a really interesting character to me because he, like you said, like he's really kind of angry at the world. You can tell he's quite kind of, he's got like selfishness, aggressiveness, and the only kind of, I don't want to use the word humanity because he's not human, but the only kind of other side of him, the more kind of emotive side, the empathetic side that you see, is with any interaction with Groot. But even that's laced with sarcasm and aggression and insult. Um, and I think even just having like that slight hint of it in this film opens up for the progression of his character and opens up towards what you see later on. But I'm appreciative that they didn't do that from the offset. Like his kind of found family story didn't go into like, oh, like I found all these people, now I'm going to be an amazing like I'm going to be an amazing person now,
Right.
because that's not Rocket. Like, Rocket is
No.
got layers and layers and layers of this trauma, and he shields himself so well with all of this aggression. And it's going to take time. It's going to take a moment. It's the same with Gamora. Like, he's very much on that same level of, I've had a horrific life.
Yeah.
Now I'm with this ragtag bunch. Well, I guess I'm going to start showing a bit of empathy and a bit of friendship, but I've still got my shield around me. I'm
Yeah.
still closed off to most of you.
Right.
And then you see the walls break down as the character progresses through. And I think it's just such a sweet kind of realization story.
Right. And really it happens with all the characters too. They all
Yeah.
have their walls up constantly. As
Mm-hmm.
much as they accept each other and they want to be with each other and everything, they constantly snipe at each other. They constantly push against each other. You see it in the second movie, especially because Rocket is pushing and pushing people away. And Peter remarks about it too.
Yeah.
You got to stop pushing everybody away. And it's a thing that obviously Rocket is doing, but they all kind of do it a little bit. So
Mm.
they all just kind of push against each other and rub each other the wrong way. And it's like, yes, we work well together, yes, we obviously need each other, but we also aren't used to this, and we don't know how to deal with this in a good way,
Yeah. I
in,
think I
in,
think
in an
the
emotionally mature way. Yeah.
yeah, I think the most accepting and loving and open character in this entire film is probably Groot.
Groot, yeah.
he's he's just along for the ride, and
Yeah.
he's just a nice tree humanoid. Like,
Yeah.
he's there, he has a lovely time with it. He opens himself up to everyone, even though 99% of them can't understand what the hell he's saying. um they learn eventually.
Yeah.
And then by the end of this, he does like the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is, if anything, that is a show of pure love and
Yeah.
acceptance and family that he expresses out to everyone by saving everyone else's life.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we see, like, later on, we see the progression of Groot going through like the teenager phase. So he becomes
Right.
sarcastic and closed off, and he has his own
Yeah.
other mini character progression. But for this film alone, he's
Right.
just there. He's just this big friendly guy, just looking after Rocket, like trying to help everyone, having a
Right.
great time, even when he's in prison.
Yeah. No, and that's what's fun about Groot is that
Mm,
whereas all of the other are like closed off and pushing against everybody, he's the one of the group who is completely open, accepting of everybody, wants everybody to be there, wants to be a part of everything. And it's a joke that keeps happening, is that that every time they say, oh, we're going to split it three ways, and then Groot's like, I am Groot, and he's like, I want some of the money too.
it's like,
So
what about me?
yeah, and they're like, fine, four ways. You know, and he definitely earns his cut by the end for
Oh
sure.
yeah, 100%.
But it's just, yeah, that's what makes Groot an interesting character. And on top of that, having a 3-word vocabulary, but obviously it means something more.
Mm-hmm.
And that Rocket understands what he's saying and can help translate through it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating, it just makes for a fascinating group. It's this weird, definitely this misfit group of people who really, like we said, shouldn't work together, but that do.
Yeah.
And that fighting against, not really trying to save the universe at first. They're just trying to make their money and get out of whatever they can, while
Yeah.
they can. Trying to, and we haven't talked about it yet, but talking about Ronan, the
Mm.
villain of the piece, this guy who wants to destroy Xandar. Definitely, this is what makes it interesting too, because in the comic books, the Kree are they're definitely a warlike species, but I wouldn't have said that they would have necessarily been always portrayed as the bad guys necessarily. Um, they're just another alien race out there that is, you in terms of the comic books, their main antagonists were always the Skrull.
Yeah.
And with we get more of that in later movies, starting with Miss Marvel. But that conflict isn't here in this. This is like, this version of Xandar and the Nova Corps, which I'll get into in a minute because I'm not a big fan of this version of the Nova Corps, but but I get the reasons for doing it though. But seeing this, the Kree being okay, well, we're going to broker peace with Xandar, but this guy who is a zealot, like, guy who wants to destroy you. Oh, we're not going to do anything about that. Deal with it yourself. It's just like, what does that mean about brokering peace then? Like, you're not going to like actually just tell your guy, hey, knock it off.
It's like, you need to simmer down for a minute.
Yeah. So it's interesting, especially because Ronan the Accuser in the comic books isn't necessarily a villain. Yes, he's kind of been like portrayed as the villain in a way, but he's like the top like enforcer for the Kree. So of course, if you come into conflict with them, then of course that's going to be an issue. But it's not something where he's necessary. I wouldn't have called him a bad guy in general, like a villain in general. Just because it's like if you were to come into conflict with, to see it from a different perspective of seeing it in the comic books, at least seeing it as somebody who was protecting their homeland or something like that.
Right.
It just depends on your perspective. But in this, obviously, he's being portrayed as an out and out villain. He's genocidal and wants to kill all the Xandarians for whatever
reasons.
Whatever reason he cares for. I mean, even Thanos calls him out on it, and he's like, Thanos is just like, I don't care about your stupid petty bullshit about this. Like, get over it. Get me my orb and shut up.
Yeah. He's like, do you work for me? Yes. Do what I tell you. Don't care about all your crap behind. Like, just. You deal with that in your own time. That's not overtime work. That's your time work.
And I think it's interesting too, because at this point, this is the most we've gotten of Thanos in the movies up until this point. But at this point, he's known as like the most powerful being in the universe. That nobody's been able to stop him. He is like, just death incarnate. But it's only just kind of been hinted at here and there, just little by little, and we hadn't really gotten much of that. It would have been kind of cooler to see, and I think it's part of what I think they were trying to transition to in this new phase with Kang, was we get a little bit of Kang, and then we were going to get different versions of Kang along the way until we get to the Kang dynasty. But with him, I think that would have suited a little bit better to see Thanos kind of working his way through behind the scenes. Maybe just give a scene per movie or something like that, just a little epilogue of just what's Thanos doing today, and just watching him just ransack the universe.
A day in the life of Thanos.
A day in the life of Thanos.
Another planet just absolutely decimated, and he just flies away, and you're just like, all right. On the next episode.
He just turns back and says, see you never. That's just horrible. But
that's another multiverse version. That is like that's happening somewhere in another multiverse in those films. We're just watching Thanos destroy shit.
yeah, exactly. That's the version with the Thanos copter from the comic books.
Yes, I have seen the picture of that. Yes.
So that actually weirdly exists in the MCU because it's in an episode of the Loki series. It's in some of the later episodes. It's in the place beyond, where everything goes when they take it out of the time stream.
Oh my god, I'm gonna need to rewatch Loki to see that.
Yeah, it's like real quick.
Yeah. Oh, I had not picked up on that. I'm gonna need to rewatch to see that. That sounds amazing.
But it's Thanos is great in this for what little bit we get in here. I think Ronan is okay. I think that the actor, and I'm completely blanking on his name.
Lee Pace.
Thank you, Lee Pace. Lee Pace does a great job. I know Lee Pace more from Pushing Daisies.
I was about to say that to you.
I love that show.
That TV show. Oh, it's one of my favorites from when I was growing up. I remember that being on. I mean, this is a UK moment. I remember that being on, I think it was ITV, which is like channel 3 here. And like I would sit in my kitchen like with the little crappy TV that was in my parents' kitchen and watch Pushing Daisies because no one else wanted to watch it with me because they didn't care about a film about a TV show, sorry, about a baker who spoke to dead people by like touching them.
Touching them, yeah.
Like it was so good. Lee Pace is my
Yeah.
absolute love because of Pushing Daisies.
Oh yeah. And it's so it's a different 100% different character. He's like so different from who he is in Pushing Daisies. So
I
it's
did not recognize him as
no, I
Ronan when
didn't
I
either.
first saw it.
Yeah.
And then I like I can't remember how it came up in conversation, but someone said to me and was like, "Oh yeah, you know, Lee Pace." And I was like dorky, adorable Lee Pace from Pushing Daisies. And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Dude got buff." What happened?
It's
All of
like
a sudden.
it's like it's required whenever you join the MCU is you got to get buff. So
It's like you go into the MCU and you somehow get second puberty. Like everyone just
just get
goes.
swole.
I mean, Chris Pratt did it as well.
Oh yeah,
Like
no.
he
Yeah.
got hench as well. So there must be
Yeah.
something in the water.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how buff these guys get. I mean, Paul Rudd did it for Iron Man. He's like got
Oh,
one scene where he's got, and literally this is how it always is too. It's like one scene where they have their shirts off just so they can show how buff they are, and then throughout the rest of the movie, they're covered up. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, you got to get that buff for that one scene.
I
Uh,
mean, I am not complaining about it. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think most people are complaining about it. It's
I
fine, you know.
I am fully there for all of the attractive MCU humans. Like it doesn't matter if they're guy, girl, alien,
Yeah,
they're all hot and I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like I think that it's great to have especially that equal opportunity there. Like definitely show off the guy. Get buff, show it off, have fun with that. Because we've
Yeah.
had plenty of
And then
women
you
having to show it off. So
but then you get the other side of it as well, and then you get like Fat Thor. But bless him, boy was going through stuff. He was really
oh
going
man,
through
he
stuff
really
at that
was.
point.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll talk
And I
about
love
that later on in the series as well.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, he's but Lee Pace does such a good job at running. You don't realize it's him, between all the makeup and the costuming and stuff like that.
Mhm.
There's no way you would have known it was him. And the different accent and everything that he's using in this.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting character. I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it overall. I think that
Mhm.
he's kind of just a bland character in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um, it's just mostly, he's a toady for Thanos.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but the real one of the real breakouts of this, and who really doesn't get a lot in this movie specifically, is Karen Gillan as Nebula. Um,
Yes.
she's fantastic as the character, and we get much more of her in the next two movies, which I
Mhm.
love. She's great in this, but she's vastly underutilized. She should have been, realistically, I would have liked to have seen her be more the villain in this one than Ronan, and
Yeah.
just see especially that sister dynamic between her and Gamora. We get a little bit of it at the end, but it would have been interesting to see more of it, rather
Yeah.
than the Ronan stuff.
I feel like Thanos sending Nebula off to hunt down and end Gamora because of her betrayal, like as the main villain story for that
Mm-hmm.
section, would have been so much more compelling to me. Because, like you said, you
Oh
see it
yeah,
later on, you get the sisterly relationship and you get their kind of reconciliation and you get their kind of break apart again when you see like other universe versions, but then even
right,
that's kind of a reconciliation at some point. It's
right.
there's so much in their storyline, but yeah, the first Guardians, they really do underutilize her. But then I feel
Yeah,
like they were almost kind of testing the waters with Nebula, with Karen Gillan as Nebula. And then they realized
yeah,
that they had such positive fan reaction from it. They were like, great, throw her in, get her in the
right,
ring. Like she's going to go into like the core team. She's going to be part of the core storyline. Like let's utilize her as much as
right.
possible. And I'm so glad they did.
Well, and it's possible, and I like to speculate, but it's possible that she was, not necessarily intended to be the villain of the piece, but definitely used more in this one. But but maybe Kevin Feige and Marvel in general were like, let's put in Ronan, let's put in a big villain, blah blah blah. And then that's when they moved into, in the next one where they, and showed the just the antagonism between the two sisters, well, at least between from Nebula to Gamora,
Yeah.
because Gamora wanted to help her, wanted to save her. I did find it was interesting though too. Watching this, I found a fun parallel between this and the first Thor movie, when
Mhm.
Nebula is hanging off the ship, and Gamora is trying to save her from falling, and then Nebula just chops her arm off to
Yeah.
fall, and it very much paralleled that scene in Thor when Loki's hanging off the Rainbow Bridge and just decides to fall to his death, death,
Hmm.
quote unquote death.
Yeah.
Um,
Always a big quote with death with Loki.
yeah, yeah. And it was interesting. I mean, obviously, Nebula doesn't even, there's no pretending that she dies. She jumps onto a ship, steals it, throws the guy out, which is hilarious.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
yeah. And so, I thought it was interesting because we had that parallel between two brothers, and now it's two sisters,
Mhm.
and again, adopted in each instance, but
Yeah.
felt like they were still, family enough, and in so much that, we get more of that in the next movie. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like the clash of siblings that isn't because of blood, but is because of kind of reputation
right,
is a really big theme in the MCU, which is explored really, really well with both kind of sides of that. So with Loki and Thor and with Nebula and Gamora,
right,
as much as kind of I wish that we'd seen a little bit more of it, I feel like what we have seen from both sides is it feels real. Like it doesn't
right.
feel like they're putting it on in any way.
I think it's an interesting recurring theme through the MCU as well, that
Mm-hmm.
like how you brought that up, was that not only do we have these sibling things, and you see it recur even in people who weren't siblings but who have sibling relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Cap and Iron Man, um
Yes.
Cap and Bucky. You have multiples of this happening throughout there. It's definitely a theme they kind of go for, but also bad parents. um
Yeah.
Thanos, Odin, who's not necessarily a bad parent per se, but he definitely made bad choices in the way
Yeah.
he handled things.
Yeah,
Um
definitely.
and and then especially in handling with Hela.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then, and Howard Stark, and just bad parents or bad parent figures. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting that this whole kind of thread that goes through this, and I hadn't really thought of that until just now when we were talking about this.
Yeah, there is definitely a big ongoing theme of kind of generational mistakes. So
Yeah.
you suffering for the repercussions of options and choices that the generation above you made. So whether that's a parental figure, whether that's a country as a whole, whether that is
Oh,
just in general kind of history repeating itself because of choices that people have made previously, like the repercussions from those kind of choices do come up and up and up in the MCU. And I think it gives us a big variety of stories as well, though. Like it's
yeah.
not always focused in kind of one perspective. Like you
Right.
get all these different tangents and all these different storylines from that ongoing theme.
Right. And then we get, and that was, another thing that I've mentioned in previous episodes, that a lot of and it doesn't really, it's not in this movie, but in other movies where we have the heroes who the villain of the piece is a dark mirror to the
Mm-hmm.
character. Thinking of like somebody like Killmonger to Black Panther,
Yeah.
or um um Ironmonger, or, which is weird, two mongers. Ironmonger to Tony in the first movie, um, Red Skull versus Captain America. You get all these people who are more dark mirrors, similar power sets and stuff like that. Which Guardians again is great for that, because it gives you somebody who, because of the Infinity Stone that he has, that he's on a whole nother power level. That you which is always the better, in my opinion. I think it's better when the heroes have somebody who is much more powerful than them that they have to fight against, and they either have to team together
Mm-hmm.
to fight them, or get their butts kicked and then have to figure out a different way to go about defeating this villain. And it works really well in terms of things like Thanos or Hela, this with Ronan. So it's interesting that these recurrent themes, we get hiccups here and there, where things change, and that's where I think we get the better movies in a lot of ways too.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
so the things where the hero isn't, they might win, but it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt
yeah,
bad. And
yeah.
in this one, it does hurt. It, like, they have to grab that infinity gem away from him, and they have to come together physically as a team, touching each other to take on that pain
Hmm.
from each other, and that shared pain. Like, and that's, again, it speaks, there's so much, there's, again, going into metaphor, you're going into this metaphor of like sharing this pain across your friends and your family to stop something that's bigger than all of you.
Hmm.
And it just speaks to, I think that's, James Gunn is really good about that in his movies too, is especially his superhero movies, and about these found families, and what that how that heals them.
Yeah, I
So
think, yeah, James Gunn is very good at doing trauma bonding with found families.
right,
like
right,
like everyone jump on board, let's all talk about our problems, and now we're a family and we're great together. Like, now we
yeah,
can work.
right. Well, and but that's the thing though too, is like we said, it doesn't always work. Like, you
No.
have to make it work. You have to stick together and keep making it work together, because
Hmm.
it's not always going to be pleasant. You have to keep fighting, for that friendship or that family in that way, to make it to come out on the other side. So
Yeah, and as wacky and as weird as Guardians is, I think that's kind of what grounds it. Like,
yeah,
that's like the kind of base truth of that makes it an incredibly relatable film, even though we're just
right,
following a bunch of aliens, humans, experiments across space.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
we've
no,
got
it's,
all sorts in this bunch, but we can all relate to them.
yeah, yeah, and that's what I think made the movie as successful as it was that relatability, that yes, we are in a universe beyond Earth, that
Hmm.
yes, we started on Earth, and we kind of, branch out, and we've got this connection through Earth with Peter, but what they're going through is relatable, because it's a very human thing. It's very, relationship thing, to go through, and to find your family, to find those friends, no matter how damaged and how broken you are, that there are
Hmm.
people out there who will um become part of you, and as long as you make that work, that you can, keep that family, and you got to keep working at it.
Yeah.
But you can move to a better place.
Mm. Oh, we got so philosophical.
Yeah,
It's so sweet. I
yeah,
I tell you what, the other thing that I think was the reason for the success of this film as well was the absolute banging soundtrack.
there you go. Yes, don't want to forget talking about that. The set
Oh,
the soundtrack on this one, like, I don't think the other two movies, like, as much as they got good soundtracks, this one as a
this one.
whole, this one worked
Mhm.
so well. I like this one he has tried to recapture, and hasn't been able to do it quite the same way, but this one has such a good soundtrack that it's
It's
impossible to beat.
the amount of times that I've listened to Awesome Mix Volume 1 just
Yeah,
while I'm commuting, while I'm working, while I'm going about my daily life. And I can visualize each scene that each song is in because of how
yeah,
many times I've seen Guardians. But that every single song in this film is an absolute tune. And
yeah,
like, yeah, like in terms of music that I listened to before this covers so much of my music taste anyway. So
right,
this was like spot on for me. Even
yeah,
even Escape, the Pina Colada song. Like, even that, I'm like, banger, great.
yeah. And this one supplanted Reservoir Dogs as what I think of when I hear of Hooked on a Feeling. So
Yep,
yeah,
yep. It's
yeah,
that intro, that first little intro. I every time I'm like, Guardians.
yeah. But it's interesting. I think, my favorite, of course, throughout all of this, is probably going to be Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Oh,
Just
yes.
one that's already a fantastic song that I love anyway, but then it's at such a perfect moment of the movie too. It's at the very end, and they're all just coming together. It's like it because it's the first song on the Awesome Mix Volume 2
Yeah.
that he puts in the tape deck. And so it's so emotional. That moment where he's discovering this, he had this tape this whole time, this other piece of his mom that he could have had.
Yeah.
Um, that that it breaks your heart. That he's had this. He didn't want to open it because it was the last piece of his mom that he had, and he couldn't let that go enough to open it. And once he did, he found something even deeper in there. And then when you put in that tape and it starts playing, and he's looking around and he sees everybody on his ship with him, and he realizes that now he really does have another family and people that
Yeah.
he can care and love for. And it's just, oh man, it's just so good.
Yeah. I think for me, there's two, because one of them is just because it's one of my favorite songs of all time, and then the other one is just because it's one of my favorite intros to any movie ever. And that, like, the "Come and Get Your Love" scene
Oh
is
yeah, yeah,
so good for me. Like that song, I probably have replayed that song more times than anything on Awesome Mix, just because of that opening scene and him like singing
yeah.
into the little rat thing. Oh god,
Rat
what are they
creature,
called?
yeah.
Yeah, whatever they are. They're like when he's like singing along and he's got his jacket on and he's like having a little boogie. And then when you see it from another perspective, when
In
everyone
in
goes back
game,
in time, oh
yeah.
my god, it's so
I
funny. And
love
he just
that, yeah.
so out of tune and he's like spinning around, and I'm like, that is exactly what I would look like if I was trying to sing along to a song on my phone or something when I was like
Yeah.
commuting. But my favorite song of all time, like on this in this film, is Moon Age Daydream, because
Oh, okay.
I love David Bowie. Like, Bowie is one of my favorite artists of all time. So hearing that song and hearing my favorite Bowie song in a
Yeah.
film, and that moment, I remember like that, like playing for the first time when I watched this film for the first time, and I think my entire body went, oh, okay, this is my film. This is my film. Just because it just connected everything together. It
Right.
made me love Marvel. It made me love like Bowie even more than I already did. Like, it just combined all of my things together, and just it's just this big cozy bowl of happiness. So yeah, like whenever that comes back on the playlist when I'm going through, and oh, that song
Yeah.
does things to me in all the best ways.
That's good. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm super familiar with a lot of David Bowie's work. I've listened to a few bits here and there. I think my favorite of his is Golden Years though.
Oh
So
yes, that's another. That, to be
I
fair, that's another
love Golden
absolute
Years.
banger.
Yeah.
This is another thing I can blame my dad for, because my dad is the biggest David Bowie fan I've ever met in my life, and he, growing up, he listens to every single album extensively, so I
Yeah.
know more lyrics to David Bowie songs than I maybe know for any of other bands or artists. Like, it's just ingrained into my like being.
That's funny. Yeah, I only know Golden Years because it was there was this weird Stephen King miniseries called Golden Years that they used it as the theme song.
Yes. Oh my
And
god.
so then I was just like, oh my God, this is such a good song. And then
Mm,
like I would hear it occasionally after that, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is my favorite Bowie song ever. So
mm. Yeah, I
um
think I think the album that Moon Age Daydream comes from is also my favorite Bowie album.
okay.
So it's like wrapped up in a nice little bow. Either that or Diamond Dogs. Diamond Dogs is a fucking banger of an album as well.
But I will agree with you. Come and get your love. That's so good. Like I don't know if I had heard the song before the movie, but
Mm,
after that point, like yes, I re-listened that song a lot.
yeah.
Because that's such a good song just in general. Um, and yeah, just the sequence and everything. It's so funny in game too. That just him dancing around and you're not hearing the music this time. And so it's just funny
It's
watching him just dance around. But you in your own head, you're doing it,
you can
you're
hear,
listening to
yeah,
it.
you
So
know what's happening to him in his brain, because you were
yeah,
there. You were there at
yeah,
that point. And then Nebula's comment as well. It's
yeah.
so good.
Oh man, yeah, no, it's a great part, and I love that song. I'm trying to remember what the first song is when we first meet Peter. That one's a good song too.
Oh, it's oh, that's gonna annoy me.
I know now I gotta
Mm,
look it up.
yeah. I've literally got the list in front of me of all the songs trying to work it out, but
Oh, weird. They're all out of order on the thing.
yeah, on the playlists, they very often don't show them in the order that it plays in the film.
Is it? Oh man, that's gonna mess me up.
That's going to annoy me for the rest of the night as well.
Yeah.
Because it's not Ooh Child, because that's later on for
No,
Dance
that's the very
Battle.
end one.
That's
Yeah.
the that's
Or
that's when
that's
he's
the dance off. Yeah.
yeah, when he's like, it's a dance off, dude. It's just like it's a
Yeah.
distraction. It's not Fall Around and Fell in Love, because that's the Gamora song.
Yeah.
When she's like, it's very pleasant. Um, oh, I can't remember.
That's not it.
This is when the rest of the podcast is just us sitting in silence trying to work it out.
Yeah. Okay. It's I'm Not in Love by 10cc.
Oh, that I should have known that. That is a banger of a song as well.
Got to turn that off. Okay. So, but yes, it's that song. Yeah, I like
Nice.
that. It's so it eases you into the movie or like real
It's
nice and light and
yeah, it's like background, it's mellow, but it's also got that sadness to it.
yeah.
It's a good
Um,
introduction to him as a character.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting too because I had to look it up today because they make a reference in the I watched the gag reel after I was done
Nice.
watching the movie and because I like gag reels.
Oh, I
Um,
love a gag reel.
I would like gag reels more if they were more bloopers.
Mm,
That's what I want out of gag reels is not them goofing off and dancing and everything, which is what they've become. But I
yeah,
want blooper reels. That's what I
yeah.
really want is blooper
I
reels.
like I like the blooper reels of like people like running into stuff and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
saying really inappropriate things instead of their lines by accident, and everyone being like, "Oh,
right.
Freudian slip."
Yeah. But in the gag reel, he mentions Top Gun or something like that, and she asks what's Top Gun, and I was like, "Well, Top Gun came out in '86. When did he get taken?" And so I had to
Oh
look it
yeah.
up, and it was 1988 was when he was taken. So I was like,
Oh
"Okay, well,
okay.
at least that explains why he knows so much about the '80s."
Hmm.
Because I was just like, "Why would you know that much about the '80s?" Depending on when you got picked up. So
Yeah.
'88 it would have been perfect time to know most of the '80s stuff. So
Yeah, most 80s
uh,
pop culture
yeah,
references were like in his brain. And he was
yeah.
like the perfect age for that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, being an '80s kid myself, I understand completely. So,
See, I'm a 90s kid, but I am very much of the mindset that I should have been an 80s kid because of how much of my love for like music and films and stuff is in the
right.
80s.
That's
Well,
funny.
technically I should have been a 70s kid and then an 80s teen is my mindset,
Yeah.
but everyone always thinks they're born
Yeah.
in the wrong generation.
I was what 6 to 16 in the '80s. So, it was
I
prime
was
time for me.
Yeah, I was not even a thought in my parents' brain at that point.
Yeah, I'm old, so
No, you're not.
but yeah, no, it's so I overall I really enjoyed this movie. I think it was a bold move for Marvel to
Yes.
take in doing this, especially at the time when they're still in the second phase.
Hmm.
You know, other safer companies would not have done that. That would not have tried to do something that wild. Everybody at the time was like, "Oh my God, what are they thinking?" But I mean, the MCU as a whole has always been about experimenting and throwing things in there, and they kind of started off a little bit kind of safe-ish, I would say. Thor was always kind of a chancy one.
Yeah.
But building up to the Avengers was like a huge risk. Who knew if that would work or not? And the fact that they made it work and that they're now 30 plus movies into this whole franchise and multiple TV series that they've made it work. And I really love that, it Guardians kind of helps guide that into that because then it made them go, let's take even more chances. Let's get even weirder. Let's have more fun with it rather than, just sticking with, because sure, we could have stuck with a lot more grounded reality stuff with like, Captain America stuff, which again, I love that stuff too.
Yeah.
So, but that's what makes comic books in general real fun is the wild swings and the weirdness and the more grounded approaches and stuff like that. So it's always
Mhm.
fun to see how these movies have grown and changed as well. So,
Yeah, I think, as you said, Guardians was like for me, I think Guardians was like the biggest, wildest risk that they took
Yeah.
in that era. But it was the beginning of it. It was the beginning of the evolution of the MCU and the beginning of the kind of realization of, oh, we can go down this route as well as the serious route. And I think this was a really strong start for where they went.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they, continued down. Speaking of the future and them, like, kind of dumping James Gunn after the weird thing happened with, his tweets or whatever like that, which had already come out before he did the first Guardians movie. And they already had gone and said, yeah, we're not worried about that. He's already denounced that. He's already apologized for it and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and said, that's not who he is anymore.
Yeah.
That he's grown. And and then I was happy to see that realistically it sounded like they needed to just kind of publicly go, yes, we're firing you, but behind closed doors, you're coming back for Guardians 3. Go do something else for a little bit, come back. And then and it worked out well for him, because he managed to pull off the rare you know good movie for the DC universe. And then got to come back and do and finish up the Guardians movies the
Yeah.
way that he wanted to. And I think that he really had that freedom in the last movie to really push what he really wanted to do overall. So
Yeah. I mean, I think going back to the rankings that we were talking about earlier, I think Guardians 1 is still my top just because
mhm,
of how, I guess, how many times I've seen it, how much it really meant to me when it came out. But
right,
the third, when James Gunn came back and did kind of what he wanted and kind of in terms of like almost a conclusion, but not quite a conclusion for the characters. There's
right,
open ends here and there. There's potential for people to return, but closing that chapter, I guess, for those characters means that the third one is probably my second favorite. So I go
yeah,
1, 3, 2.
right, yeah. So I'm pretty much the same. I would say
Mm-hmm.
three's either even or just below number one, and then
Yeah.
two is at the bottom. But again, even two being at the bottom is still you know means it's not that far away from number one. It's
No,
still
no,
a
no.
really good movie. Yeah.
And in terms of the MCU, the second one is not the worst MCU film for me
Oh
either.
no,
Like the
no,
second one
not even
is
close.
no, exactly. There is a lot worse in the MCU. I'm
Yeah.
saying that the MCU generally consistently
Yeah.
is quite good for me.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I'm not
I
one
would
of
say,
those.
like, yeah. I always say that the MCU as a whole has, even their worst movie is better than most of what DC has put out, and most of
Yeah,
what comic book movies in general have put out.
yeah, I would
That
agree with
most of
that.
what Marvel puts out, even if it's stuff that I probably won't watch as much, like,
Hmm.
say, I'll put out there Iron Man 2 and the Hulk. That those are two of the ones on my on the very bottom. They're
Hmm.
still great movies. I still watch them. I'll watch those above most any other comic book movies. So
Yeah,
just because their
yeah.
consistency is good.
I feel like so the Hulk, especially, I have a massive love for the character,
Right.
but the film,
It's
yeah,
uneven. Yeah,
it's
it's very
uneven.
uneven. Yeah.
And I do stand by. I really wish that Mark Ruffalo had been Hulk from the beginning for me,
Yeah.
but only just because I love Mark Ruffalo. I love most of
Oh,
what he's done in his entire career. Everything that he's acted, he's done with a sincerity that I appreciate in terms of character. Um, and I do, as much as obviously the Hulk film was a bit of a flop, I do kind of wish they'd taken a risk and done Mark Ruffalo's individual Hulk film. But here we are. We've got to the point now in the MCU where I don't think it'd make sense for him to have his own film. We've kind of passed that point.
yeah.
But yeah, I think the Hulk film's one of the bottom ones for me as well.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though
I
even
mean,
though I do adore him.
yeah, yeah. So, it's but this Guardians movie stands high above most, I would put it pretty high. If I look at my letterboxd, I've got an MCU ranked list.
Oh, amazing.
And
I feel like I need
uh
to do that.
now I will say that a lot of the newer movies have kind of pushed things down.
Hmm.
And so Guardians is probably, let's see, where's Guardians at? Where is it? Oh, there it is. So Guardians is number 12 on my list currently.
Ooh,
So
okay.
yeah. So there's like I said, there's some newer stuff in here that I've elevated higher. But I would say generally that's not bad where it's at, honestly.
No.
Number
What's
12 out of 41 things currently.
what's Guardians below? So what's your number 11?
So it's Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, if you're gonna put something above Guardians, yeah, Spider-Man, fair enough.
So I currently have Guardians 3 above that at number
Hmm.
6, and Guardians 2 is at number 30. Um
Fair.
so um but it's again, my list is kind of in fluctuation because
Mhm.
I'm rewatching things, and so things will be kind of move up and down accordingly,
Yeah.
depending on
It'll,
especially newer stuff that I watched that I gave like 4 or 5 stars to will probably
mhm.
go down to 4 or 3 stars depending on you know where I kind of place it. Like something like Guardians 3 will probably go down a little bit.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot because I really liked it.
Mhm.
I think that it stands pretty tall with everything else.
Yeah. And are
But I'm
you
pretty forgiving.
yeah, fair. Are you including only MCU on this list, or is it Sony projects as well? What's your
No,
kind of stance on it?
so this is just MCU. So
Nice.
MCU movies, which does include the Spider-Man Sony, like just the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies.
Right. So not
And then the
Spider-Verse, not the animated.
no, no.
Fair. Cool.
And then all the Disney Plus shows are all ranked in here as well. So
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they're all canon as well, so that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, to
yeah,
be honest, I think Guardians 1 is still as a standalone film, I think Guardians 1 might be number 3 on my list.
okay, all right,
But that's just because of the multiple like nostalgia hits that I get from it,
yeah,
and the amount of watchability that I have for it, and the kind of love overall I think I have for those characters now. So I think
right,
yeah, I think it's maybe third on my list.
okay,
But like in for entire MCU, I'd say.
yeah. I
Fair.
have typically mine are much more some of the bigger things, stuff that's above that is like Infinity War and Endgame,
Yeah.
uh all three of the Spider-Man movies,
Hmm.
Quantum Mania, because I like Quantum Mania and I don't care what anybody says.
I was going to
um
say, I think you are one of the only people that I know that
I
has
know.
said how much they love that film. That's really
I do.
surprising.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean,
um
if there's reasons to love for you, then absolutely
yeah,
fair enough. I'm
yeah,
never one with MCU to like tear
yeah,
people down
same.
for their favorites. I feel
Yeah,
like people always have reasons to love what they love. And I mean, Quantumania was a lot of fun.
yeah. And that's the thing. I think people were just some of the complaints I've heard on it don't hold water.
Yeah.
Like I get that if it's not your cup of tea, fine, it's not your thing.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it to compare it to Guardians is in a lot of ways it's very Guardians like.
Yeah.
And so because it's about family, it's in this weird universe, and
Mhm.
so it's for me it hit a lot of those things. But also I love Paul Rudd.
Yes.
And that I've loved him before he entered the MCU. And then Kang is one of my favorite um comic book villains.
Yeah.
So getting to see him and the High Evolutionary in these recent movies has just been like so good, and that's what helps elevate my scores for those movies as well. Is just because
Mhm.
they got great actors to play them. And uh, I mean, we'll see how well that goes in the future, but with Jonathan Majors anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We'll see how that's handled and report back
yeah,
on that.
yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, so overall, I really love this first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It's just it's a lot of fun. It helped move the MCU forward in a fun and interesting way. Um, and that's my final thoughts on it.
I think I have to agree with you there. Yeah. I think as a film itself, it was it was an event for me. It
Yeah.
really shaped what I think I ended up loving so much about the MCU for the future, because it had the heartfelt moments, it had the seriousness, but it also had the wacky weirdness. And
Right.
as an absolute weirdo myself, I love a weird film.
Yes,
as
absolutely.
as a final thought.
Well, now that we've done that, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me Haunting Ghouls magazine, which is
Yes.
a an online magazine which has lists, reviews, editorials from a female non-binary perspective. I'm a senior contributor there, so check me out. I've got a bunch of articles there. When I'm not ranting about all sorts of horror films on that, you can see me on various social media platforms. I'm not going to say the new name for it. I am on Twitter.
Yes. No,
And
it's always Twitter. It
it's
is
always
never
Twitter.
anything
It's
else.
always Twitter.
I don't
I'm
care
not,
what
no,
what they say. It's Twitter.
it's not up for discussion. It's Twitter.
Exactly.
But you can find me under the handle fall_out_Iona, because I am a very older emo elder now, but I'm still an emo elder, still there for Fallout Boy and all that kind of
I'm
stuff.
with you.
So, and then when I'm not ranting about them or horror films, I'll be ranting about other geeky culture and TV shows and movies and MCU. So yeah, check me out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me again. Hopefully we'll
Of
do it again
course.
soon.
Definitely. Thanks again to Iona for joining me. Next week, Angel Krause joins me to talk about the Blair Witch trilogy. And on Friday, Devon Taylor returns to talk about Avengers: Age of Ultron. Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is a part of the Morbidly Beautiful podcast network. Please check out morbidlybeautiful.com/podcasts for more great shows. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast is Gratitude, composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and Blue Sky, and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.